So what does Nora say? Nora says that drug dealers don't have to be incarcerated if you really read beneath the line. Why would we not want drug dealers to be incarcerated? Why would we not want them to go through criminogenic assessment? Are they sociopathic? Looking at this blonde gal that you saw, Shelby Rowland, who did the $48,000, she looks like she's a super mom. I lost my first assistant with the interviews with that gal because my assistant said, Jesus, that could be me. You know, cute little boys and made a mistake, and I said, bye. You know, I had enough time with the manipulations of homeless, and I knew that this woman was manipulating me. Well, she manipulated, she's now doing time, she's been doing time for a straight 13 years, with 1 year out when she pulled another gal in from Rancho Santa Fe, North County, San Diego, to be a part of an interior design firm, and she took that woman down with her. The woman didn't even know about her priors. That's how convincing that she is. She has a master's in child development, and she has those 3 little boys. Now, that is a high level of criminogenic capability and sociopathic behavior. You don't want to treat somebody like that. When Ben McLaughlin was a captain at the jail, he signed her up to go help out in the counseling division because she was so daggum smart, and she convinced him with a little bit of this with the leg and the talk and doing what she could do, standing up all straight. Oh, well, I can help out. She got all of the Social Security numbers of every one of the employees and all the deputies, tracked them, and created more havoc. So, see, we don't do any of this study that we can do and that we have available with the techniques that we have now in psychotherapy and with brain imaging, et cetera. And how do we go about assessing, and how are we going to release down the road? Because we do read now about the fact that you can have PET scans, MRIs done to determine if children have, you know, too small amygdala, too large for feeling, or whatever. It's going to be a very interesting period of time, but we've got to get active in it. We have to know how to vote. And when you look at the NORA legislation, just look underneath, what could this really mean if we pass this? So we had 3 strikes. In the late 90s, that was a real mess, and that's when I was doing this project at Las Colinas for 2.5 years, and Ben McLaughlin was having a fit. He said, I'm way over cap. Cap rate is 450 in this one little jail, and we're at 750 on any given day. They don't have health conditions, which, am I a sympathetic individual for these inmates? Not necessarily. There are some cases where I could say I was. I'm very empathic to their needs. I'm also very, very empathic to their children's needs. But when you see people come in and they have TB and they're thrown into a ward, the ventilation isn't right and everybody could get it, then I'm very sympathetic for everybody, including those who are coming out and going to give it to us. So we're not looking at these things, and we're not looking at how these dollars have to be processed. Instead, we look at NIMBYism. You know, we don't want to have this jail in our neighborhood. And right now in Santee, they don't want to build a new facility because they don't want it to become bigger and better and have more women incarcerated there. Well, I can understand that, but at the same time, I can understand going into some place that used to be a girls' camp in 1968 and was closed down because it was so run down, and they haven't done anything with the plumbing. So, given all that, what's the upside of all this? What did I learn? I learned that you can do something. I learned that I wasn't happy being a North County mom, taking these gorgeous photographs of people that I was getting paid tons of money to change them into canvases and have people want to look like somebody else, even though I made them look like themselves. They still paid tons of money, and they ended up looking like themselves, and that was just fine. But at some point in time, we had a couple of accidents take place. One of them was a serious situation where 4 boys were driving a car in the middle of the night coming from an unchaperoned party at a house where there was lots of pot, lots of alcohol available. They were all high on a kite, wrapped themselves around a eucalyptus tree, and one of the boys, the splenic artery, was transected by the car door going up into it. My husband and I were out in the middle of the street with these kids in the middle of the night, nobody around. Paramedics came, they lost the golden hour. This was just brushed underneath the rug. You know, nobody paid any attention to it. The father of the boy who was killed donated the steps to the stadium because his boy was a football player, and the guy was a big-time developer. No one was ever going to mention this. And when I went to back to school night and mentioned it to the entire group, and I said, you know what, we were the ones out there in the street, and nobody ever called us to see what was going on. I had angry people look at me and bleachers at the high school that one of my daughters, this daughter, was attending at the time. And one of the parents came over, and it was the parent of the driver who had been out of town, and she came up to me and she said, you know, I meant to call you. She said, you know, my son only had half a glass of red wine. And I said, how would you know? Where were you? So that started something in me. It felt just god awful. I had anger in me that I couldn't do a thing with. I was going to these benefits. I was going to the Helen Woodward opening, and this was for the animal care in our neighborhood. It was a thrill, and everybody's dressed up to the nines. And here is this mother of one of the other boys who was talking about the fact that she couldn't make it to the funeral that week because her nail had to be redone. Well, I kind of felt I was starting to lose it. And her hand was extended to talk, to say hello, not knowing that I'd been out in the street, not knowing anything. She could have cared less. And I said, I pulled my hand back, and I said to my husband, I have to go home. And we left. 2 weeks later, our youngest daughter was trampled by a horse, and we had the same paramedics. That was the clincher. I said to those paramedics, don't F with me this time. And my life has been different since that moment. I was outside the Children's Hospital for 2.5 weeks living in a little RV, which has had me dedicated to some RV life. We have one coach that we keep at Newport Dunes, so periodically I might come in here and drive you all crazy. But, you know, it's an amazing thing when you almost lose a child, and it's a horrible, horrible thing for those who have lost children, or you come close to it, and you're never the same. You have to do something. You can't stay in the protected womb of whatever it is that you think in society is going to be okay. Everybody's trying to make more money. And I found that I was going to rent a jail in downtown San Diego and do my serious Ansel Adams black and white studies, or my Judy Dater, or do some funny thing with a peacock running through it, or I didn't know what I was going to do, when the homeless pulled me out and said, what are you doing? I said, I'm taking pictures of a jail. Well, you want to know about jail? We'll tell you about jail. And I spent 3 years with the homeless while my husband was building the Hall of Justice. When I was with the homeless, who sometimes were ripping off the job site of my husband doing the Hall of Justice, I found out some pretty zany things. First of all, I found out that they would talk to me like they had nothing to lose. I didn't have neighbors that did that. There's no way I could share these two tragic things that happened. Not sensitively in Rancho Santa Fe. I love the beauty of that community, but I'm a Midwestern girl. You know, if you don't shovel snow, you're going to shovel something. And, you know, as a result, I had my girls growing up shoveling that stuff, and one of them was almost killed by one of those individuals. So where was my good old philosophy? That came square in the face. I better figure out how to live in Southern California. I better figure out how to have my girls understand there's going to be work ethic, but not with shoveling. So this is where we've evolved. I am so fortunate to have a daughter who's decided to go into graphic design and do this type of work, and she's traveled with me doing these university lectures, which I'm not going to get all into that stuff with you all at this time. We've touched on some of it. And I have the one who is almost killed is in her last year of getting her license to be a clinical social worker, and the middle one went off on Harvard scholarship and fellowship to Europe, and is in urban design and planning, and she is going to change all of the cities in the United States, I'm certain, except for she's pregnant with our first grandchild now, so that, I said that might slow things down just a little bit. But the one thing that I can feel really good about is what we've learned, and coming out of the jail and having to search around. Polly went with me because she did the project with me in juvenile hall, which is book 3, and it's the foundation for our foundation, Humane Smarts, which is a scholarship fund for kids who are at risk